So after the brief introduction in the previous tutorial about adding audio into a processing project, we're going to add audio to our Duck Hunt project to wrap this up so we can move on to other activities. So once again, we need to import our processing sound library. So we have access to that, and then we need to make a sound file variable for music and a sound file for sound effects. Now if you have other sounds you want to bring in, you want different music in each state of your game, that's a little more complex, and we're not going to go into it at this juncture. In a future project where we are getting more involved, we'll look at how we will build an entire audio player that will change the current playing song based on where we are within our project, so we can do that. Right now we're just going to play with some basic things of adding in our music and sound effects, much like in the previous one, but we're just adding it to this project. So now that I've added those in, now we need to populate those variables. So I'll set my music here. It's a new sound file, and then the word this, comma, and then the path name. Now, as I've shown here in my data folder, I have my images. Within that I made a subfolder called sounds, and then I put my sounds in that, the ones I used in the previous tutorial, so they're already made. Do remember, for our sounds we're using waves because then there's no delay in playback, and sounds need to be at 44,100 Hertz and 16-bit. If they're at 8-bit, they do not work. So if you use the JSFXR sound effect maker to make your sound effects, make sure you check the 16-bit button, otherwise it will fail. So I'll say data / sounds. Now I made my sounds folder, I didn't capitalize it, so data was capitalized, S and sounds was not, and now it's capital ITTY space bitty space 8-bit dot wave. So there it is. And now if I want my sound just to start playing, because this is the primary music I'm going to use in my whole project, I can just tell that sound to play. I'm going to play it at normal speed, but I am going to lower the volume so my sound effects sound better. So I like this fact that you can bring sounds in that are loud, and then you can control that playback, because again, in a more complex game, we can ramp up or down the volume for the player's experience to play with intensity levels and ambient quality so that the player has better engagement in what is happening. So now we can just test and make sure things are going right. And unable to find it because I spelled itty wrong. I have one too many T's. Let's try again. See, this is why we test early, test often. Okay. Just kind of thinking the Space Hero, now that I'm remembering my image background, Space Hero might be a better background image for it. But we'll leave it at the itty bitty for now. So now what I want to do is load in for my sound effects. So SFX hit is going to be equal to a new sound file. This, comma, quote, data / sounds / and then I renamed it from the previous tutorial, so now I called it hit because it is my hit sound, so it just makes sense to do that. Now I don't tell it to play right away because I only want it to play that sound when that hit happens. So now what we can do is wander into our game state. So we're looking in the game state here, not under the timer. We're looking where intersects happen. So when we say enemies hit true, we can add to the score, but we can also go SFX hit dot play. So that will play it, but we do run into the little problem that if the sound is currently playing, then if we hit 2 or 3 of them, it could be bad if they stack up. see where I can get a couple. Alright, so because the introduction rate of my enemies is so slow with that kind of how I've processed them in, so let's go into variables and adjust that because I want to get where I can hit 2 or 3 at the same time. So I'll modify my enemy interval, just take a 0 off, mark it down to 50, so we'll see they all come in quickly. So you can see it got louder because a couple played at the same time, but because I only need 3 to win, it ends right away, so we're not hearing a lot of them. So we probably do want to do like we did on the previous one where we check to see if the sound is playing. So we can go if, and we're going to use, we'll look at 2 syntax options we can use for it. So is playing is equal to false, and only then do we want that sound effect to play. So if I hit return twice, go there, and then we'll cut that out of there, put that in there, auto format, control or command T. So if the sound is playing is false, so that's what that says. The shorthand way of writing this is we just use an exclamation mark. We don't have to do the double equals false. So the exclamation mark when we're working with conditionals translates to the word not, meaning negative. So if SFX hit is playing is not playing because we put the exclamation mark here, then we tell the sound to play. So that would be the shorthand way of doing it. So if you see the exclamation mark in conditionals in coding, it's asking, is something false? So is this false? That's what that says. Or if you like it to be verbose because it just makes it easier for you to understand what you're reading, then we can do that. We'll just put the spaces in there, clean that up. So now I'm going to change the score up to 30 or something, so now I can try and hit a bunch of them at once and we'll verify. But you see I hit a whole crew and only one sound played. So now with that, turn those off, let's just play it again and see. So you can see how there it's playing multiple versions. So do you have to do this? No, but if you don't have, if your enemies are like in my normal version are spaced out, so they're coming out every half second, so if we modify that timer in my start, let's close the music, we don't need that going while we're looking at it, but if it's every half second, so they're spaced out, so I can't really get multiple instances at the same time, doesn't really matter. So you have to look at how is it going to play out on whether you have to do these conditionals or not. It's a good practice to do that because then it prevents you from getting that unexpected where you just get the wall of sound where the same thing is playing over and over and over continually, and then that's problematic. But once again, you can see how we've been able to add the music. We're telling the music to play at a reduced volume so we can hear a sound effect. Of course, we could adjust that. And as was mentioned, if we stored our playback rate as a variable every time we replay this successfully, we could boost up that value. But if we lose the game, then we could reset it to say back to 1. So that would be a way to change how your game is playing. And again, all of these things, it's about creating that optimal experience for the player. So good luck and happy coding.